Hey, you gotta unmute.
There it is. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Just didn't realize what time it was.
That's
Get to
okay.
bed. Did you want to try the view?
Yeah, let me see. Can you enable the
Oh,
screen
sorry.
sharing? And then we'll see. And then we'll go. This one's going to be a little bit more lighthearted than last night. So,
Hey, last night was amazing. So,
oh, thank you. Let's see. Hold on.
workshop because Beth knows her SHIT when it comes to this stuff. So,
I try.
yeah, thank you so much, Beth, for doing this.
Oh, yeah. Like, I feel like it should be common knowledge, and it's really not.
It's not. Where would we learn this? Grad school doesn't teach you this.
And that amazes me. Like, that offends me a little bit. We actually did have one professor in undergrad that was like, hey, today we're going to pack something up. And we were all like, this is dumb. And he was like, no, you need to learn this. And he actually like put aside the time and we watched him pack one of his paintings, which was not very fun, but hella practical. So I'm happy to do this to help.
If anyone is listening who wants to put in the chat where they have learned to pack their work, if it was anywhere other than their own whim, their own Googling, nowhere. If you've learned from grad school or like,
raise your little hand.
I would just put it in the chat because I'm interested to hear where you've learned this, because I know for me it's just been like, maybe if I've seen a couple artists do a couple things, I might be like, ooh, I should probably do that. But otherwise, I'm just kind of making it up as I go along. So,
yeah.
Oh, Rebecca. Yeah, I have learned so much from Pam too. Rebecca Potts said Pam
Yes.
Taylor.
And Pam and I have like poloed about packing, and we'll like send each other polo woes of just packaging. And it's real fun because Pam and I will be like, they sent this in a beer box. Why did they send this in a beer box? This is not archival, nor is it secure or structurally sound. And like we'll send each other happy polos about packing. We have grand times.
The woes of packing.
The woes of packing art. Okay, so are we recording? Are we good to go?
We are recording.
Okay. Hey everyone, thanks for coming again for another artist talk with me. I'm very touched for everyone being here. It should be really informative, and please ask questions. If y'all want to ask questions during the slides, raise your hands. Like, this is a little bit less formal than last night's, so I'm really happy to answer all the questions that I can. So I'm an exhibitions coordinator at the Louisiana Art and Science Museum. So I pack art, ship art, I do condition reporting on the art that we receive and we release. I coordinate after hours events, public programming, text design. I'm now a graphic designer, which is a whole nother story. Labeling, hanging work, managing artist submissions for exhibitions, and also making all of my curators' dreams come true. So today I'm going to kind of go over packing art and then hanging art. So we're going to start with packing. So there are a lot of different modes of transportation. In your car is really safe. In a moving truck is also good. And then shipping the work, you can either hire shippers, hire movers, or just use a standard shipping company. So let's start with 2D because most people work with 2D, and then I'm going to get into 3D after this. So rapid and glassine.
Real quick, Beth, I just wanted to say this file will live on the network. So don't feel like you have to take vigorous notes. Like, you will have access to this recording again if you want to. Just letting you know.
I want this to be like so public. I was like, Kaylin, just send it because everyone needs to know this information because I think it's really important. Because I get to unwrap the art that we receive. And I'm like, this should be much more common knowledge. And I wish that more people knew about these things. Whenever you're wrapping 2D works, whether they're framed or whether they're oil paintings, always wrap it in something first that's like glassine. If you don't have glassine, it is a little pricey. Then you can get acid-free tissue paper, acid-free paper, or acid-free plastic. The main thing is you don't want any off-gassing going on in your paintings and in your works. This applies
Okay,
to
wait,
2D. Oh,
I'm
yeah.
I'm gonna play dummy
Yeah.
this whole time. I will take the brunt of all the dumb questions.
What you got?
What do you mean by off-gassing?
So with acid, with some materials, not all, but some materials, so like plastics, or you know that smell you get whenever you unwrap plastic?
Mhm.
That's a gas that it's releasing. And sometimes those gases can discolor things or harm your art in some way. It may be different, and it depends on how fresh that plastic is from the factory. But if you get something that's acid free, then you're good. Like you're solid. Even if it's not technically archival, if it's acid free, it'll usually get it from point A to point B really easily.
Okay, and what is glassine?
So it's in this picture here. It almost looks like wax paper, but
And
it's
where
not
can
wax
you
paper.
buy it?
Uline sells it, and then I have a link to Gaylord Archival is where I buy most of my archival stuff. So that'll be later on.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So that applies to 2D and 3D. It's good to wrap whatever you've got. It also creates a moisture barrier to make sure that nothing will get wet and then get on your surfaces. Always use acid-free artist tape when you're taping your glassine or your acid-free tissue paper or acid-free plastic to the work. That's really important as well. And then you wrap it in bubble wrap. So once you've got it in some sort of waterproof barrier that's acid free, you then wrap everything in bubble wrap, and you just wrap it like a Christmas gift. There's no beautiful magic to that. Courtesy tabs, if you know what those are when you fold the tape over so that there's a little piece that you can grab it. We love courtesy tabs. They make us happy on the inside whenever we have to unpack the art. If all your courtesy tabs are facing in the same direction, you get bonus points. If your courtesy tabs and your tape are clear, you can also like mark with a Sharpie, because sometimes if it's clear bubble and clear tape, it's hard to find where all the tape is. So you get bonus points if you put a little Sharpie marker or something like that on where your tape is so that people can find it. So that's like major bonus points if you really want the people unwrapping to love you a whole lot. Make sure your bubbles always face outside. I will have a slide on this later of how it can destroy a painting, but the little bubble imprints will get on the painting or sometimes the glass. So always make sure your bubbles are outside, not inside. And I have graphics for that later. So we're still on 2D right here, but cut a foam core board or cardboard to go on the front and back of your work. You're basically putting something rigid in between the bubble and the outside, and then you tape those around the bubble, kind of like in this picture here. Do we have any questions? I see things popping up on the chat.
Not yet. I'll let you know.
Okay. And then after you've got your layered
They're just
bubble.
thanking me for asking the dumb questions. That's all.
Oh, great. Okay, we'll continue. So wrap it again in bubble. So go crazy on bubble. Don't go crazy on tape. I have a slide on that later as well. But wrap the whole thing again in bubble. And if you have space in your box, so if you have a little extra space anywhere, put more bubble in that gap, because your piece will slide around as it goes around on the belt. And if you just roll up like a little sausage roll of the bubble, it prevents anything from moving. So that's like another little nugget trick if you want. Easy on the tape, heavy on the bubble. So if the tape sticks to the bubble, the preparator or the exhibitions person has to cut it. So that means that there's a lot more tape and a lot more scissors around your work. And if you're working with canvas or linen or something like that, it's not the best thing to have scissors next to it. So don't over tape it, because A, it's a little risky, and B, it drives the person absolutely nuts who's undoing the stuff. So if you want to go overboard on anything, go overboard on bubble. Don't go overboard on the tape. It drives us insane. All right, so boxes. Where to buy your boxes. You can either cut down your boxes. There are tons of tutorials online. I personally do not have time for that. So I a lot of times will not do the box tutorials, but I've seen some of them. I've watched them. They seem really great. But I have a local guy that'll charge me like 20 or 30 bucks for a double corrugated, so like 2 layers of cardboard box for the same amount that FedEx would charge me 200 bucks for the same thing. So find a local pack and ship store. A lot of the times they'll build their own boxes there, and you can get them so much cheaper than if you go to UPS or FedEx and you're like, hey, I need a box for this painting. I've spent $400 on a box at UPS. Like, it's ridiculous.
Mhm.
And FedEx, I put that picture in there. Can y'all see it, or is the little?
Yeah.
Okay. So I put that picture because they like slide it in this little plastic thing. I haven't had any trouble with the shipping like that, but I've only shipped one like that and it did make it there on time, but it's like a little plastic sleeve. But I didn't feel like if another box slammed into my box and shipping, I really didn't think that it would make it. It did end up making it, but they do offer, these are called like art boxes at FedEx. But if I were you, I would just get a local guy to make you a box or cut a box and then fit it to that and then just send it custom. But I haven't had any issues with the FedEx boxes like this. I just don't trust them. Okay,
I have a question about the 2D. So you said glassine, bubble.
bubble, rigid, something rigid. It can either be cardboard or foam core and then bubble again. And then in
Okay,
the box.
so is glassine enough of a like moisture barrier?
Yeah.
It's basically like wrapping it in plastic because I always thought there also needed to be like a rain barrier level.
Yeah, so I've seen both where they're like glassine and then plastic. I've also seen just the plastic.
Hmm.
Both of them work. The glassine is water resistant, so I haven't had any trouble in the past with it getting wet. But
I mean,
it
I guess
can,
bubble wrap, if it's
you bubble the
bubble
hell
wrapped
out of it.
well, that would be
Yeah,
waterproof
it's
too, right?
and then you've got 2 layers of bubble plus the glassine plus the cardboard. Like, you're solid. It
Okay.
shouldn't get wet.
A question about works on paper. Do you have more information about works on paper coming up?
Yes.
Okay.
They're a
Okay.
little bit towards the end.
Okay.
But yeah, is it unframed works on paper or just standard? Are they framed or
Packing advice for works on paper that cannot be rolled.
they cannot be rolled?
I
Whoever
can bring
that
that back
is.
up when we do works on paper if you want.
Yeah, whoever that is, have your questions ready for the Q&A because I feel like that's specific. Okay, 3D, yay, 3D. 3D is the most stressful thing to pack for me because I'm always terrified that it's going to shatter somewhere in between. So special 3D shipping notes. There's a difference between soft packing and what they call rigid packing. This is soft packing. Soft packing, you can have the top open, and rigid packing, it's like covered all the way. So this would be an example of a soft pack. So we only had to take it like 4 miles down the road. So we didn't need to like crate it or anything like that. But it was really spindly. It was on like this little wire and it was a little bit precarious. So what we did is we wrapped it in the tissue paper. We gave it a styrofoam base for it to sit in. So we actually have a little carved out section for it to not move the base. And then we made like little Christmas wreaths of bubble wrap to go around the bottom to make sure that nothing really moved. So that's just an example. And we slid it into the box because it was really delicate. So we actually had to slice the box down the front, slide it in, bubble the hell out of it, put that side of the box back up and then retape it. So this would be an example of a soft pack. You can also soft pack paintings where the top is exposed as well. So if someone, that's more like, so you know, if someone says, is it going to be soft pack or rigid packed? Like if a museum professional were to ask you that, now you know what it is. Because it's a different like terminology, I guess, that I had to learn whenever I started working at the museum. So some more special 3D shipping notes. Use all the layers of bubble that you can imagine. Try to have no empty space in your box. Make sure your box is larger than your sculpture in every direction. Consider cutting styrofoam base for the bottom, like I showed you on the slide previously, and then put your sculpture in it. You want to try and fill every space with bubble or some sort of padding. If you use packing peanuts, which I'll get to later, you put them in a Ziploc bag. And then you want to make sure they fill up all the corners so that nothing shifts. They also make these like archival egg carton cushions, like the one I've got pictured here, which you can also use. And I have a link to a place that sells that at the end. Some more special 3D shipping notes. Consider double boxing. If you've got something like glass or pottery that's very delicate, you want to consider doing a box within a box, essentially. So the moving belts with shipping companies go about 40 miles an hour. So it's pretty quick. So imagine your glass sculpture going 40 miles an hour through the belt, and how you would want it to end at the end of that 40-mile-an-hour trip. So if you put a box within the box with the cushion outside of it, that usually prevents anything from getting damaged. And if that outside box gets hurt, the inside box is usually okay. So double boxing is a good thing. To crate or not to crate? That is the question. I get that question pretty often. Like, when do I get a crate? Crates are expensive as all get out. So enter into the crate world with a lot of caution and skepticism, because of course craters want to sell you their crates. So if you're shipping a lot of really large, fragile pieces, yes, consider crating them. If you're shipping an entire show of three-dimensional glass objects, yes, consider crating. If you're shipping 2 paintings that aren't that big, just box them. If you're shipping across the country or overseas, consider crating, but weigh the cost. Always weigh the cost of crating, sorry. Are you getting paid for the show first? Are you getting paid for shipping? Are they covering the shipping? What is the piece worth? If the piece is only worth $1,000, but the crate is worth $2,000, don't get the crate, get the box. So those are some things to kind of weight. Crating companies, if you do need to crate something, to consider, Uline does custom crates, Craters and Freighters, Crate Tech, and there are a couple others as well. But you can also build your own crates, but it's a little bit tedious. Sometimes with me, I have to like weigh time in the studio versus time shipping and packing. So if it's not worth the time, then just get someone else to do it. Any questions on crating so far?
Did
Nothing
you
yet.
say I was looking at the chat, did you say they're more expensive to ship too? Like the
Oh
cost
yeah,
of a crate is a lot more, yeah.
yeah, for sure. And I have some of the shipping companies later on in the slideshow as well. So I'll tell you all a little bit about each one, like crating, boxing, and things like that as well. So this is going a little bit more into like the details of like when you have the work arrive at the location. So if you want to be memorable, be organized. There's a big difference in, so I report to the curator directly, right? So if I get a box shipped to me and then the sculpture is wrapped in baseball caps, yes, that's happened. But if it's wrapped in baseball caps, which are swag from a leftover show, I am going to report that to the curator and be like, this is ridiculous. If you send me a condition report, an image of what your work looks like and how exactly you think that it should be unpacked, I will love you for a very long time. And I will also report that to the curator, and she will remember that. And maybe in 10 years, yes, that's how long we plan out. But maybe in 10 years, she'll say like, oh my gosh, it was really great to work with that person. Let's do it again. So these are condition reports. We have to fill them out at the museum. They're usually an internal document. They're not necessarily an external document. We don't have to report them at any time, but we do fill out condition reports. So this is an example of one. If you Google search condition reports, there will be lots of them to choose from. You're basically just saying, this is the condition of the work as I send it to you. So condition reports plus an image are really important, and they're really lovely. So note everything that is in there. If you have a hairbrush from your bristle brush that you're painting with and it's inside the painting, make a note of it. If you have your regular hair and it's stuck in the painting, make a note of it. If your cat hair got stuck in the painting, whenever you were painting it, make note of it. It lets us know that that was a pre-existing condition before it came to us. It also creates a legal document for you so that if anything changes, by the time the work gets back to you, you can technically file a claim. So this is a very blurry image, I know, but it's an example of how something looks in a very big museum. That's the Victoria and Albert Museum. But this is an example of what a condition report looks like. So we take a picture of something and then we're like, hey, there's a blob right here that's a little lighter. There's a white speck right here. And then we make notes of it and then we list them out. So I have this link here and I'll show you guys. I don't know if I can do it while I'm doing the screen share. But I've got this link here. It's for the Texas Tech University, has a really good free PDF. And
Did
this
you put
link
it
will
in the
take you to
chat?
I don't know. I don't know. Oh, can you see this?
Yep.
Okay. So sample condition reports. So this is from Texas Tech University. They have a really good one. It's free. So basically it just lists out the general conditions. And then you have this little area to sketch something in. So if you've got a figure, go ahead and draw that out. If it's a sculpture, you can kind of sketch it out. And then you make notes, stable, unstable, what condition it is. But my favorite part about this condition report, I know it's a 20-page document, don't stress out about that, but that they have a glossary at the end. So like efflorescence is not something that you see very often, but I get to see it pretty often and I have to make note of it. So pitting, tarnishing, crizzling, all these things are not normal words that we use on a day-to-day basis, but it's really useful for you to know them. So if you are doing a condition report, it's good to kind of skim over these. Split, bubbly areas, odor, oozing, sweating, all these things are things that we have to note. So this is a really good free doc that they have on Texas Tech University. Okay, good. Am I back in my presenter mode?
Not in presenter mode.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. So I know that Texas Tech one is like really intense. We have like a single page that we use and then we make notes on that one. So that's just something that to do and to consider doing whenever you're sending your work so that you can always have documentation of how your work should look like when it arrives. If you have extra instructions, installation artists, and things like that, if it takes a little bit to put it together, if you can also include that either in the condition report or in a separate document of how we should unpack it and how we should hang it with images, we love you so much and you make our lives so much easier. And the goal is to make good connections with the museums and the galleries that you work with. And by doing things like this, it helps. It helps create lasting impressions.
I'm not going to take this for granted that this is not an obvious thing. Your work should always be ready to hang.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
It
Don't know if I have that in a bullet point. Your work should always be ready to hang.
Like, you should not ship us work that needs to be hung on a dowel and you don't have the dowel included. That has happened at Stay Home Gallery. Like, or just people don't have like brackets or they don't have the wire and it's just like, what?
Yeah, we had one 3 or 4 weeks ago that didn't have a wire, and our director is really big on making sure that we have the proper hardware, and the hardware we have is security hardware to make sure no one steals the painting because she doesn't want to be liable for it. And so that makes perfect sense because she doesn't want to pay for it. Duh. So, but the person didn't have a wire, so I couldn't connect it with the security hardware that we use. And so I had to like rig a wire on the back, kind of. So, but I couldn't like obstruct the painting in any way. And like her canvas was overlapping. It drove us both nuts. And she's been doing this for like 45 years. Like she was a really old artist. And I was like, maybe she just doesn't care anymore.
And a lot of galleries and museums will actually charge you if your work shows up not ready to hang. They're like, you can pay us $150 an hour to put the wiring on the back. Like they charge like a crazy amount if it shows up to them not ready to hang.
Happen. Don't tempt me, Kaylin. That's very tempting to be
yeah, it's true. It's true biz.
Yeah, because it does. It takes us an extra like hour. If I have to go to the hardware store or something, that stops the whole installation process. It's really, And I schedule our installations sometimes down to like 15 minutes. Like, like, so if something throws the whole day off, it's really not fun. But yes, make sure your stuff is always ready to hang. I know it's a pain in the ass, or sorry, I know it's a pain to put the D-rings on the back. I know it's a pain to tie the wires. I feel your pain.
Yeah, but in the same way that if somebody bought your painting or whatever it is, like show the same courtesy. Like you're
Yeah,
not going to ship it to a client and they have no idea how to put it on the wall, you know?
this is true as well. Sage words of advice from Kaylin Butai. Okay, so some common mistakes. Please, for the love of all that is good in the
For the
world,
love.
for the love of all that is good, do not use packing peanuts. Do not use packing peanuts. We call them the herpes of the packing world. Okay, they get on everything, they spread, they stick to everything. It's terrible. If you have to use them, if you have to, put them in a Ziploc bag and stuff those little suckers everywhere. But please don't use packing peanuts. Use bubble wrap. I promise you can use bubble wrap. Also, bubble wrap is perforated. I don't know if y'all know that, but there are like little lines and you tear the bubble wrap and it's beautiful. So packing peanuts are hell to clean up. Sometimes they are staticky and they will stick to your artwork, meaning that I have to touch the surface of your work, which is never a good thing. They also move during shipping. So if you have something and then all the packing peanuts move to a different area, you have 3 corners exposed and 1 area that's got a lot of packing peanuts. So those can shift and jostle and you can damage the corners of your piece during shipping. Just use bubble. Okay, please. Wrapping the bubble facing inward is a really common mistake. Always wrap it out. I have that on the next slide. Taping the packing material to the frame or the piece of art, always try and have it touching the packing material. So if you're taping something, it's like bubble on bubble or glassine on glassine. Try not to tape it onto the actual physical work itself. I know that this stuff is expensive, but sometimes it'll leave a icky residue, which you don't really want. So using old boxes is also a no-no. Like I said, I have had art show up in beer, like, like a 16 pack of beer, and they were like, eco-friendly. And I was like, not structurally sound. And they were really proud of themselves. So just get a new box or get some new cardboard. I know, and like, if your Amazon box is beautiful and really lovely, that's okay. But try not to use the one that's been in the garage and rained on 3 times.
Okay, because I was gonna say I just shipped something today in a box that came like 2 days ago and it's in
That's
great
fine.
condition.
That's fine. But like it's mainly the beer boxes. Just
Yeah. Or
avoid them.
like you said, it has damage, been
Yeah.
even you can tell when cardboard is getting soft, like even if it
Yeah.
doesn't appear damaged, sometimes it's like you can see it and feel that it's
Yeah.
getting soft, you know?
Yes. We want beautiful, rigid cardboard that will protect your work as it travels across the globe. Okay, so here's a close-up example of what bubble wrap can do if your painting is still a little bit wet. I'm talking to you oil painters out there. So if you are finishing a commission real quick and you're trying to rush it out the door and you're hurrying and you don't wrap it with glassine and it's still a little tacky, this is what bubble can do to your life. It can be very sad. So if you are doing that, if you're in that situation, wrap it in the glassine, put a piece of foam core or cardboard, preferably foam core, on the top, and then wrap your first layer of bubble. But this is the devil of bubble wrap on a fresh piece. Shipping companies, USPS, UPS, FedEx, FedEx white glove. Okay, so FedEx has this bougie option where you can call and say, I have a piece of fine art, and it's called FedEx white glove, and their customer service is extremely wonderful, but they are expensive AF. So whenever you call them and you say, hey, FedEx white glove, I've got to ship something that's this size, it's this weight, they will say, okay, great, that'll be $5,000. And then you say, gosh, that seems steep. And then they say, well, it's 2 drivers the whole time so that the artwork is never left alone for a pit stop or anything. They sleep in that truck, but they don't sleep. They just drive the whole time. And then they like, it's air conditioned. They don't take anything else on the truck except your work. Like it's super fancy, but you pay for it. As far as like mom and pop shippers, I love an ANR shipping. They're a mom and pop out of Houston, and they have wonderful customer service. I absolutely adore working with them, and they're really great about picking up. They can also drop off, and they're good about getting you quotes. They can handle everything from boxes to 12-foot paintings, which we had last spring. So, but they're really, really good customer service. They also were really nice. We shipped the third week of March last year, which was fascinating. So we had some like very expensive paintings on their way back to New York, and they stored them for us for like 6 months in an air conditioned thing and didn't charge us or anything. And then they eventually got it to the location. So
Wow.
like just extreme customer service. I love working with ANR. Craters and freighters is a really another is another common one, but these are the ones that I've used the most. I know there are a lot of other freight lines out there, but these are some of my favorites. And ANR is not just in Houston, they travel all over the US. So they have lots of freight lines. Another ANR story, one time when we were getting those 12-foot paintings and they were arriving, they were able to call another truck that was also shipping in Baton Rouge that day. And then the two trucks backed up to each other, put down their loading docks, and then lowered the painting down. So like they just went above and beyond in a lot of ways, and they always have, and they give really good prices. They're better than FedEx White Glove. So any other packing and shipping questions before I move on to hanging?
Yes.
What we
We
got?
have some questions about 2D work.
Okay.
Let me go back up. So Rachel, you had the first question. I was wondering about packing advice for works on paper that cannot be rolled. I imagine the glassine won't work unless it's wrapped on canvas or panel. And then she has an example of her work, which I'll show in a minute. It says, this is the example of my work that is on paper, matte and back, but not framed, in clear sleeves for collectors to frame themselves. I'm in a shipping predicament. So
I would probably just sandwich it in between two pieces of foam core. So do it with the backing and the matting and then the plastic, and then take one piece of foam core and another piece of foam core and try and make them acid free. And then do you know how to you tape along that edge, and then it's almost like a book binding. If you tape that edge on the inside, and then you can like sandwich them together, if that makes sense, and then keep one side a hinge. Does that make sense?
Rachel, if you want to unmute, if you feel like you still have questions.
Let's see if I have like a
No,
piece.
that's super helpful. Thank you. I've
Okay,
like
great.
have not been able to figure out how to do that. So that makes sense.
Hold on, I'm gonna look. Well, okay, at the end of this, I will look at my flat files. I think I have an example of that, like sandwiching, but it basically you just like make a hinge, and then you can put the foam core and then foam core and then do that, and then bubble, foam core, bubble, box, ship it. You should be good. Does that make sense?
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Yes.
And as long as like, you might even want to tape the plastic to the foam core so that it doesn't wiggle during shipping as well. That might be something a little bit extra, that like one extra little tip of tape on each edge to make sure that nothing really wiggles outside of that foam core while you ship it. Might be something else too.
Okay.
This
All
is
right.
this
Thank
is
you.
unrelated, but it applies to this. I feel like this is under the umbrella of this conversation. If you were in wearing all the hats, some of you know what I'm going to bring up, but we were talking about like, you know, when you ship your work to a client and maybe they've had it for 10 years and maybe they die and their kids don't know who the work is from because they can't read your signature, that the
Oh,
back
no.
of your work should always have, you shouldn't just have your signature, you should have your name written out legibly.
And the title of the piece, as well as the dimensions if you want to go above and beyond. And if you want to be real fancy, you put some sort of documentation with it with the quality. What am I thinking of? The price,
Mhm.
value. That's the word. That would also be helpful.
And not stuck on with a sticker or in some way that it would come off. Like it needs to be permanently, you know, archivally, but permanently put on the back of your painting or
Yes.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
Jocelyn asked for Q&A, what about if the gallery says that framed, unframed, or loose work is okay? So referring to the question about
I have a slide later on about magnets and things like that on how to display that and pack that. So that's coming. I have a slide for that.
and then Susan, I think your name's Susan. I can't ever remember because it's S. Casey, but I have paperwork that I've shown that I've hang with magnets. So the piece and 2 tacks or nails in the wall behind, I include tacks, nails in the magnets.
Beautiful.
And the distance at which the magnets should be from each other behind the work. I'm not sure if that is ready to hang because it's not hung on a wire.
No, that's ready to hang. That counts.
Yeah, as long as the gallery had agreed to that form of hanging it.
Yeah. We're cool with magnets, and I have like a magnet slide coming up. So yeah, magnet that counts as ready to hang, and the fact that you have like how it should be hung is bonus points to you. Bravo, good job, gold star. So okay, let's go into hanging because they also don't cover this in art school, which they should. Because if any of you have to hang a solo show, it's a little nerve-wracking whenever you're like, where do I even put it on the wall? So if you want to go above and beyond, in addition to the condition report, you can also write out the formula for 60 center on the back of your piece. There's pros and cons to this. I try to do this with my work, but not all directors want their museums to hang at 60 center. Some directors are shorter and want like 58, and some directors are taller and want 61. So, but this is like a museum standard of 60 center. So hanging work at 60 center is a standard for most museum because they've done a scientific study and most people's eyes are at 60 inches from the ground. So a good rule of thumb is to hang it at the midpoint between 60 inches of the floor. So if you're following the formula, you divide the height of the frame by 2, subtract the distance from the top of the frame to the hanging hardware, and then add 60. The final sum is the height of where you need to put the hanger. So this is a little visual. So 69 inches up. So we've got 3 inches there. It's a 24 piece, so 12 from the center. So when I say distance from the top, this is what I mean, just so that y'all know. So team, we're gonna do some math. Are y'all excited? Isn't that why you decided to become an artist, to do lots of math in your life? Okay, so let's pretend my artwork is 36 inches tall and my wire is taut at 4 inches from the top of the piece. So where do I put the wall hanger? Go.
Boo, math, boo.
Worst slideshow ever. Oh no.
Anyone? Nobody's commenting.
put
We
it
all
there.
hate math, Beth. Sorry.
I know we all hate math, but it's still important whenever you need to hang work. Does
All right.
anyone have it in the comment?
You divide 36 in half
Yep.
and you add 60.
Subtract 4 and then add 60.
Alice, this is why I leave it to the professionals.
Okay. Well, guys,
74 in Jew. She got it.
Yay! Who did that one?
In Jew, got it.
Good job. Gold star to you for the evening. So the height of the piece divided by 2, so 36 divided by 2 is 18, minus the distance from the top, so 18 minus 4 gives us 14, plus 60 inches on your hardware, so it's 74. So you would put your hook at 74 inches. Good job, y'all. You pass, A+. D-rings are a little bit different, but you still follow the same formula. Also, please, always, if you're going to use D-rings, hang them at the same height. If they are off by a 1/16 of an inch, we cry, okay? Or we email you and say, can we please rehang your D-rings in the back of your frames for $150 an hour? I wish I could say that, but no. Please always hang your D-rings at the exact same level, please. If they are off, it's like hell in a handbasket. Y'all have no idea. So same math, 60 center from the D-ring. So you just pretend that your D-ring is the top of your taut wire, and then you measure the distance between your Ds. So if it's a 60-inch piece, then you just make sure you have 60 inches in between your two Ds. Hanging wire. Make sure that your wire is properly attached. There are lots of YouTube videos. There's a lark's head knot, lark's foot, cow hitch, girth hitch, ring hitch, all the hitches. Basically, just get hitched to your paintings and you'll be a happy painter. I have had art fall due to a bad wire. It was my art. I tied the wire, but I definitely heard my painting go smash on the floor, and it was a little bit of a sad day for me. Luckily, nothing happened and it was okay, but hell if I learned that day how to tie a wire. There are lots of YouTube videos. Please tie your wires properly. You don't want to feel that feeling in the pit of your stomach of when your painting hits the floor. It's just a sad day. Okay, don't be like this guy. You know how he's got like his wood and his wire lined up? No, 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 no. That's wrong. He is not a pro. That is false advertising. The wire should always be at least an inch below the wood on the back of the piece.
Boo.
Boo, he stinks. So at least an inch, if not 2 inches, because sometimes our hanging hardware is about an inch tall and it'll kind of pop from the wall a little bit funky if you do it less than an inch. So give it an inch and a half. Keep it tight, ladies. Okay, so if your wire is too loose, it'll look like this off the wall. It's not good. So keep that wire nice and taut so that it won't look funky whenever it's on the wall. Hanging hardware. My favorites are Hillman hangers. They are good for earthquakes. So I'm talking to you ladies in California, but they are really good. They keep it like locked in a different way. It also deters theft, which is nice. Also, be sure to check the poundage on each of these. So some of them can handle 50 pounds, some can handle 75, some can handle 100. They are meant to go in studs. So if you have a really heavy piece that weighs around 50 pounds, don't get the 50-pound hooks, get the 100-pound hooks. They're like $3. It's not that expensive, but get the 100-pound hooks and put them up there if you're not sure if it's going to be in a stud or not, because that just really secures your weight. But they are meant to go in studs. But if you're doubtful if the gallery wall will have studs, go ahead and get the bigger hooks and then you'll be fine. But these are my favorites.
They make like tiny holes in the wall too.
They really do.
Those at Stay Home Gallery, and I went to like re-plaster the walls last time I was there, and I was like, these holes are so tiny. It's like they're not like big nail holes.
Yeah, or big screw holes. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay, unframed paperworks. We're here.
Woohoo!
First of all, use magnets, please, for all of the love in the whole world. Do not use thumbtacks in a gallery or museum setting. Please, please. You can use them in your studio all day long. Just plan to trim off those edges so those little holes aren't part of the final piece. Always use magnets. It looks really unprofessional. I can't tell you how unprofessional, but it looks really unprofessional if you see a piece hung with thumbtacks in a gallery, because it looks like damaged work. Also, the work as it sinks will like drag, and then you end up with these really long holes, and it looks like damaged work. And if someone wants to then buy it and put it in a floating frame, they have all this damaged top little bit. So just trim that off or use magnets. But you can use them in your studio. Just give yourself a good like ½ inch to an inch of space so that you can stick them up with thumbtacks. But don't use thumbtacks in a museum setting. I have been to shows before and I see the thumbtacks and it makes me cringe on the inside. So shipping frames versus magnets and tubes. Framing will protect your work more than most things, but if you can't afford a frame, I totally get it. I couldn't frame this work behind me because it's too big. I couldn't find any frames online that I could order. So if you're not framing a piece, you can roll it in a tube. You can put glassine on the top and then roll it, or acid-free paper. And then you can do magnets with it as well and hang it. That does count as professional, but be sure to include the magnets or the hardware that you intend to use in the work itself. Like, don't just send a loose roll, send it with the hardware, and you can either pack it inside, but if you're worried about if it's charcoal or something, you might just want to like send them a separate box with the magnets in it. I bought them on Amazon. They have tons of them throughout the world. You can get them at hardware stores, just about anything. Quick notes on frames. Sorry, my dog is like pushing at the door. Framing your work makes it look a little bit more professional, and also it keeps it safer during hanging and shipping. Nothing like a toddler in a museum to let you know that things do get touched, whether or not you try to prevent them or not. I use plexiglass or acrylic whenever I know I'm going to ship something. You get bonus points for non-reflective plexi. It's usually not too much of an upcharge. The trouble is glass tends to shatter while it's being shipped. And some galleries, a lot of galleries, require plexiglass if it's over 24 inches on one side. I've seen that in a lot of open calls. They're like, if you're going to ship me something, I don't want to have to deal with the shattered glass on top of it. I personally really liked using frameiteasy.com for my frames. It was the cheapest site that I found that used non-reflective plexiglass. The corners weren't perfect. I had that drawback of going with something cheap. The corners weren't perfect, but when I'm getting custom frames, I was really okay with the fact that I ordered like 20 frames and only a few of the corners were a little bit off. And by that, I mean, I could like see the seam. It wasn't the biggest thing, but I do like working with them when it comes to non-reflective plexi. I've used Michael's, Hobby Lobby, Dick Blick. I've used a bunch of different framers, but I really liked them in particular. Plexiglass pros and cons though. Plexiglass is super lightweight. It probably won't break during shipping and it's less expensive. However, it scratches really easily. So if you have a toddler that has some steel wool in his hands, you probably are never going to get that plexiglass back. It bows a little if you have a really large sheet. It will kind of give a little buckle. And it's prone to have lots of static, all of the static. But I fight the static with these three products here. We use Novus at the museum. Sorry, my dog is barking. We use Novus at the museum, and if you have scratches on your plexi, the Novus 2 and 3 work amazingly. Like
remove scratches.
I know, and I didn't believe them, but I had like a gouge, and we had to reuse some plexi for a really big display, which like the plexi would have cost us $200. So I had like this 5 foot by 4 foot sheet of plexi. Or maybe it was more than that. It was huge, but it had like this scratch all the way across, and it was like a solid scratch. And I used the Novus 2 and 3. I think I did a couple of coats with the microfiber, but it worked like so well. And we use the #1 on all of our museum displays as well. So it's a static deterrent, but plexi is always static, like no matter what you do. But it does deter the plastic a little bit. But the 2 and 3, if you do get scratches, work really, really well. So that's like a one that we use. Okay, last slide. So Gaylord Archival is my favorite website for archival materials. They're a little bit more on the expensive side, but they are like the museum standard of what we use to make sure that everything is archival. They have everything that you could imagine that you could want in the world as far as like storing and taking care of art. They also have archival hot glue. I'm talking to you collage artists out there. They also have archival storage tools. They have display cases, everything like that. They offer a lot of coupons. So I know that they're a little bit pricier, but they do offer a lot of coupons. So keep an eye out for those. Questions?
Okay.
Okay.
What else do we have? So
hey everybody. Now I get to see
you can use the raise your hand feature. Jean
Yeah.
Gray, you have a question to start? No? Oh, you're just saying hi.
She's just saying hi. Hi.
Jocelyn, if you want to ask about the 2 nails, I feel like we kind of resolved it.
Jocelyn, what you got?
She was asking about hanging with 2 nails, and I was kind of like, no, don't do that. Just buy the hangers that Beth suggested. Katie,
you have a question? You're
Yes.
muted. There you are. Hey.
So as far as 2 nails go, so I have a 6 foot by 4 foot canvas that's really heavy, and I know, so I'm going to deliver it to my client, but I wanted to be able to like tell him how to hang it. And I know it would be like stuck in a stud, but like for the, and it's landscape, so it's wide. So
I think you're working on it on Instagram. Yeah, I know which one.
yeah,
The
like
one
would
you're
I
working on.
need more than one nail? Like I don't
I
know.
would definitely have more than one nail. For that size, I would do D-rings. So I would get on the back and screw in some D-rings, either
Okay.
directly onto the piece or onto the frame, and make sure they're at 1/3 of the height. So go a third down and then put them there and make sure they're at the exact same spot. And then either wire in the middle or just leave the D-rings, and then you can put 2 nails where the D-rings are.
Oh, okay.
And you
Okay.
can use those same earthquake Hillman hangers
Okay. I'll
for
bring some.
those if you want to. You don't have to. I like those just because our director loves them, so I stick with those. But you can use standard hooks or screws or nails in that case.
Okay. And then I guess I have to look for the ones that will hold like up
Yeah,
over.
the D-rings, just look for ones that'll hold like 50 pounds for
Gotcha.
the piece you're doing. It probably isn't 50.
Yeah,
Even if
no.
they have like a 25-pound, look
Yeah.
for those. But I always like big D-rings because it makes it easier when you're like on the wall trying to hook those suckers. If they're small, it's harder to do. If they're a little bit bigger, it makes it a little easier.
Would you also recommend a wire, like gauge? Like, does that, I mean, I'm assuming
Um,
it matters.
either or. So that piece you're working on, either one, just do whatever makes you feel happy. We always like wires because then we can like shift them, but D-rings are really freaking secure. So we also like that about D-rings is like we know they're not going to shift.
That's true.
So we're an old train station and there's like a train that'll pass and sometimes it like shifts. Not derails, but like they'll add things
Yeah.
to the train and it like shifts the building. So we like the fact that D-rings don't like wiggle at any point.
Okay.
And if you're anywhere on a fault line, that also helps like having those D-rings in the same spot. But if you have a client who's not familiar at all with hanging anything, A, offer to hang that for them if you're delivering it, and
Yeah.
B, have a wire if they don't.
Okay. Yeah, I'll probably mess around with it and hang it on my wall before I
That's always good.
do anything, and then it'll be good to go. Cool. Thank you.
It'll be good to go. It's looking great, by the way.
Thanks.
Jocelyn had a question next.
What you got, Jocelyn?
Yeah, so I've used neodymium magnets before with tacks, but I found that if the magnets get dinged, they start to shed onto the work. And I wanted to know if you'd experienced that and what's the best magnet source, because I have a feeling that maybe these are cheap or maybe they just need to be replaced occasionally. Question.
I haven't had that with them shedding. And I don't know if that's just like a different type of magnet, like if that was a softer metal. But I would imagine that you could either put like a little piece of paper on the magnet or coat it with like a fingernail polish remover or something, like some kind of clear coat.
Okay.
Maybe not. I don't know. I'll think
Things
about
to
that.
try. Okay.
Things to try.
Thank you.
I'll think about it a little more.
Okay.
Laura.
What you got?
Hi, Beth. This
Hi.
is great. So thank you. I have like two things. One, I think there's this kind of like, I never learned how to do this in art school. And I totally agree. I did not either. But like last year, I was working with a bunch of college students. They were hanging a student show.
Yeah.
And the barrier of like, you have to go to the craft store and buy yourself like a $20 cheap frame. They like couldn't do it. They were like, oh, it costs so much money. Like, I think that reality, like when you're in college on a college budget of like what it just really costs to like frame and ship your work. So anyway, that's like an ongoing frustration of the
Yeah.
art
All
department
artists
trying to get
everywhere.
to like get a frame for your work, and they're like, So anyway, but so I worked at a museum as a preparator for a few years in grad school, and I mean, it's a bigger institution, but we did a lot of fabrication of work for artists. And I guess I was just wondering, like, what is that level where you can ask the institution to make something for you? Like, oh, I want you to, like, I'll send you the, you know what I mean? Like, and I guess that's a conversation that probably has to happen to the curator and they have a huge budget and stuff, but
Was that more installation artist or was that more like 2D, 3D?
it was sculpture, like,
Yeah.
and it was welding or it
Mhm.
was retrofitting thing. Like one time we put together this huge cubicle set that was going to be an installation and it didn't work. So we basically had to rebuild it and they didn't have the, anyway, like, but I just,
Yeah.
like, as a grad student, I spent hours and hours and hours like making art for other artists and it always.
So we don't do that because we're a smaller staff.
Mhm.
Like it's basically me and the curator. We used to be a team of 4, but COVID, and now it's like 2 of us. But you can ask, but if we don't have the materials, we won't sign you because like we won't be able to. So like I don't know how to weld. I would have to hire an outside welder. So that might be something to consider. But if you research in Baton Rouge and say, hey, I found this welder, he's going to do it for this cost, then that would be like a different conversation. But fabrication, we try not to fabricate very much. We will frame a lot faster than we'll fabricate. We'll frame a lot faster. And bigger institutions with bigger budgets and bigger staff can do a lot more than our little staff. Like I do work for a medium-sized museum. So it prevents us from doing some of that. But at the same time, like we've had an installation artist who like we were able to give her all the dimensions and then she was able to send us some stuff ahead of time and then we were able to like start installing it without her and then she arrived on the plane and then we started installing with her. It's just, I think it depends on a case by case basis, I guess is the best answer. Also framing, please just frame them. And if you can't frame them, come up with something like some good magnets and make sure that your tubes are archival. But yeah, I understand. I also lived on a college budget. I lived on ramen mixed with eggs to get a little extra protein in there. Like I get it. But at the same time, like when you're displaying in a local gallery, a lot of the times museum professionals will come to the show. And if we see that it's hung with thumbtacks, we're going to not pay attention. But if we see that it's framed and hung professionally or with magnets, we'll look and we'll give it more thought. FedEx is also my least favorite. I saw that pop up. FedEx is horrible. Sorry, not to hate. Every time we get something from FedEx, I have to take so many pictures of that box because it's so damaged.
Yeah,
But I
we
have
get a
shipped-
lot of damaged stuff at Stay Home Gallery from FedEx too.
Yes, UPS is safer, USPS is safer. If it's a big expensive thing, go with A&R. But yeah, FedEx for some reason, I don't know what their belts are doing, but they're slinging that stuff around. But I have had more questionable boxes arrive with FedEx than I have with any other company.
Inju did ask what your favorite shipping, which shipper do you use? Do you get insurance for full price of artwork?
Ooh, that's a tough question. Okay, so I have shipped artwork. How about this? When I ship with FedEx, I do the full insurance price and I pay a little bit extra because I'm a little worried. But when I use USPS or UPS or A&R, I don't worry about it as much. So I get like the $100 minimum or whatever it is so that I don't have to pay. If it's a very expensive work, like if you're shipping something for $2,000 or $3,000, go ahead and insure it, like, and hopefully they'll pay for that insurance and they'll pay for the shipping, whoever your client is. But there's no guarantee about that. But if it's pricey, go ahead and get the insurance just in case.
Well, and isn't it like, I feel like when it's a really big piece, the insurance costs add up. But then again, you've probably sold or like you're dealing with a bigger piece. So your budget should be bigger.
Yes.
But when it's like you know, $500, it's only going to be like $6 or something to add the full insurance. Because isn't it $2 per? I think UPS is $2 per $100 of coverage.
Yeah.
So to me, it's worth it because I'm like,
Same.
but I also don't ship a lot of work that's more than $1,000. So
Yeah, but that's something to consider for sure. I will insure it, like I said, if it's FedEx for the full price.
mhm.
Customer service is really nice. So, I mean, they have that going for them. It's, so at least there's that.
Yeah, I highly recommend UPS. And for if it's a small tube or if it's something that can go priority, I'll ship USPS, like, about this size. Like if it's going to fit on their little scale or a flat envelope, I do ship that USPS, like trying to support the post office when you can, like smaller packages. But if it's bigger, like a shoebox or bigger, I'm going UPS all the way. Like, there's no way.
I agree. And I have, Isadora said it down in the comments, but I have a local company that uses USPS. And like I said, it's like two brothers that own the shipping company, and they'll ship like crawfish and king cake. Yeah, that's a South Louisiana thing, but they'll ship anything. But I can go to these two guys and they're curmudgeons, but I have gotten one smile out of them, and I'm really excited about that fact. But I can go to them and say, hey, I have this piece of art, and they have never done me wrong. Like they will build my box for $18. They will put it together and they will make sure that it's shipped, and none of my stuff is cracked with them.
And they're like friendly, like they want your business. Like I hate to knock USPS, but every time I go in there and I have more than 2 packages, they're like, we have click and ship. Like, I mean, seriously, they're like mad at me that I didn't do the click and ship. And I'm like, I don't have a at-home printer. I'm sorry. Like, I'm just like, oh my gosh. But yeah, a lot of USPSs are locally owned because it's a franchise. So you can like buy a UPS store. I mean, it's okay. I am trying to scroll.
I haven't ever seen 99 plus comments. Okay, what do we have?
If anybody has another burning question, just raise your hand or wave and unmute, because I'm having a hard time scrolling back through. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Susan, Casey.
Okay, I was late, but like I'm just gonna ask. I'm gonna rewatch and everything. So I don't want to like repeat anything, but I feel like I have two kind of. I want to just know if you covered like sculptures that have multi-pieces, like in one sculpture that are loose and get assembled. You covered that, and I can go back and watch about that.
Oh, okay. So I didn't really cover that, so you're good. You don't have to watch. So with okay, describe more. Tell me more first.
Okay. Well, I have
like, do they fit?
I have large pieces that are interlocked but loose and wiggly, and I usually just chuck whatever spare foam I have at angles so it like stays still. Okay. And I also have smaller now, but I'm hoping to do more pieces of a bunch of doll parts, I guess that's anyway, a bunch of pieces like doll part size, but I'm going to have a lot of them. And so I've shipped like 3 to 5 pieces together before, but I'm looking at like building a bigger and bigger frame, and then more and more pieces that will go onto that frame.
Okay, so
no packing peanuts.
No packing peanuts first and foremost. In your shoes, I would have lots of images. So I would almost send like a folder with it and have like how they should be taken apart and how they should be put together, like with step-by-step visual, A goes with B, B goes with C type thing. And then I would label the bubbles. So wrap them in their little plastic, wrap it in the bubble, and then like put all the bubbles together essentially in a box, like have like a nice outer layer, but like put all the little bubble parts in it. We just shipped a show that had like a lot of tiny handmade 3D printed books, like handmade and 3D printed books. And we had to wrap each little book. And I think what we ended up doing was like on the bubble roll, we would have like 6 little books, and then we would roll them up almost like sausages. And then we would label like to C, and then we would have pictures of like where they were supposed to go. And then whenever we were assembling them, we looked at the pictures and we like undid them based on like
And-
how we labeled them. But yeah,
Okay.
so basically individually wrap each little thing and then put it in there. But your main thing is going to be making
An
it
IKEA instruction booklet.
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
And I guess another thing that to branch off of that is so I've had 2 shows actually recently where I thought I was really explicit, like really I thought I gave a good detail, and I feel like so for one show, I gave a museum a big chain and a small chain, and the big chain I said lay it out however you like. I've offered like 3 or 4 pictures, or you can play with it, you know.
Yeah.
And then for the smaller one, I said, you know, this is how it is. And then I get to the show. I went to the show. I'm like, oh, they didn't do that, you know, to my directions. And I don't know whether it's worth ever saying anything or just be like, I guess I'll just like bold it, big it more next time.
How far away is the show?
This show, at less than an hour.
Okay. That's your call. You can always, if it's close, you can always offer to like FaceTime or be available during installation.
Mhm.
I have FaceTimed artists before to make sure that we get their stuff on the way that they want it on. And so like, we're like, hey, is this how you want it? And then they tell me no, and then we shift it. You know, like, so just make sure they're communicative, because if they're not, that's not a good sign. But at the same time, you know, always try to have like an open dialogue with them. You can always say, hey, you didn't hang my work right. That's
Yeah.
fine. That's a fine conversation to have. That's just,
Okay.
hey, this is what I would do to change it.
Mhm.
And just don't be mean about it, of course. You know, like it may not have been the curator installing it. It's usually not. It's usually the peons like me on the floor just trying to make it happen. And sometimes, like if they have a volunteer, if they have an intern who's a student, they may not know quite as much whenever they're hanging it.
Mhm.
So just like approach them and just be like, hey, you know, this wasn't how I specified that it should be hung. Do you think you could go ahead and change it to be the proper orientation? Here are some images. If you need me to come by and help you hang it, I can. And then they'll be like, yes or no. Like, you know,
Yeah.
but that would be like a professional way to handle it, I think.
Okay. Yeah, because it's just like I don't want to sour relationships. So like I was like, whatever. It doesn't matter right now.
Yeah. And I
It's
think
already
that's
up.
more of like a feminine response, like in a way like, oh, it's fine, everything's
Yeah.
fine, where I think like it's a lot of times dudes would be like, well, it's wrong, but it's, I mean, we're living in this reality now. So I think that you can like say it in a professional way and just be like, hey, the orientation is a little bit off, like this is more what I had envisioned. Do you need help, or can we FaceTime in order to make this happen? Like
Okay.
that's like a very concise conversation to have, and it's realistic. And what was it, someone said something was upside down?
That's upside down. We have never known. If you didn't say anything, please speak up.
Yeah, always speak up. If it's upside down, just tell us. Especially with abstract works. But a
Well,
great
but always label your work.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's your responsibility to put top,
Yes.
you know, like have your name on it, like that. I mean, no matter the work, obviously, especially installation, you should have clear instructions. But even, I mean, all work should have instructions, even if it's just top.
Yeah, and also it helps even on the packing material if there's like a little bit of masking tape that says top, so that we make sure that the particles that we're touching are touching the same particles essentially. So like we've had old works and like we don't want the dirt from the bottom to get on the top. So sometimes we'll add extra labels that say top and bottom and things like that when we're packing things up. But yeah, label top, but also if you have your hanging hardware at the top, they should know, you know, that is.
Well, it was like on top of it was supposed to sit on a pedestal, and they like stretched out long on this pedestal.
Yeah.
So it's hard to label when it's like a white piece top on a 3D, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, installation, you can't really label. I just mean 2D.
Yeah. And I guess we were talking about shipping as a lot of people, and I don't know if you covered this either, but do you guys have any rule of thumbs about like who pays for shipping or insurance one way or the other? Is it just different wherever
Good
you
question.
send
It
work?
is
Yeah.
different in each institution, but that's an excellent question. I'm sorry I didn't cover that. So shipping with galleries is usually a to from street. So if you're shipping with a gallery, it is of the gallery's incentive to pay to ship the work back because they are less likely to be incentivized to want to ship it back. I'm not phrasing this right.
Because they might sell the work.
Yeah, they want to sell the work. They would rather ship it to someone that they sold it to. But so normally you ship to a gallery and from the gallery will ship to you. Is normally how that rolls out because the gallery, they want to sell it. They don't want to pay that shipping to send it back to you. So a lot of times you ship to, and then they will either offer to ship from, or hopefully they sell it. And then that's all that has to be paid. Some galleries will ship both ways. Some museums will ship both ways. Sometimes I drive 10 hours to come and get your work so that we don't have to pay shipping. It's not fun. Right now, museums in general are tight, like tight. We've laid off a lot of workers right now because of COVID. So we chose more local shows. That's another thing. Always tag where you live on Instagram. I know that seems weird. Tag where the art is located on Instagram, because whenever we're scrolling through artists and we want to see who's making art locally so that we can drive and pick it up and exhibit it, we want to know if it's a 10-hour drive or a 45-minute drive. It's a very different thing, but do that. Always tag where you are. You never know who's looking locally. And tag like hashtag Brooklyn artist or hashtag Louisiana artist. Like always use those hashtags. We actually do look at them. Especially younger curators and things like that. That's another thing to consider. But usually it's 50-50. Sometimes if we have a grant, we can cover both ways. If we don't have a grant, we'll ask you to come pick it up if you're local, and we'll do more local shows because we know we're broke. Like that's just the reality.
I just wanted to say too, I think it's becoming more common to just go ahead and pay for your return label and provide that. Galleries love that because if your return label doesn't get used, if it gets sold and shipped somewhere, you can claim that and get that money back. So you're not taking a loss, but then it's like already done and the gallery doesn't have to go through like, hey, you owe us X amount of money, or like it creates this whole other like admin side of it. But if you've just gone ahead, you've prepaid for the work to get there and the work to come home, and then they might be able to provide you with a stipend or something after, but it's like so much cleaner.
Yeah,
it's nice, it's memorable from a gallery.
And I always try to provide return shipping labels too, and a lot of times galleries require it these days. Also, Jocelyn, if someone misspells your name, tell them. Hi, Alice's husband. But Jocelyn, if someone misspells your name, always say it. Always say, hey, that's not my name. Like first and foremost. Let's see. I've only been reimbursed for
question. Kaylin, can you go back? You just said if I pay for the return shipping,
if you prepay for it. So you're shipping a work to Stay Home Gallery, go ahead and pay for the shipping there and get a return label prepaid. If your work sells and we ship it to a client, they would pay that shipping, and what you would do is you take that tracking number or what the claim number and you ask for your reimbursement, because that label is never going to be used, so you can reclaim it from UPS.
I did not know I could get a refund. That is a great tip.
Alice, I know you've done this before, right? Yeah. But then it's just like so much easier for the gallery. It's already done, and like what we're doing in this current show is if people provided a return label, like a prepaid return label, like we asked them to, we're giving them a $20 stipend. So they're going to get some of that money back. But I mean, we couldn't pay the full amount. Again, like a lot of people are saying they haven't had shipping covered. Artist run spaces and smaller galleries do not have budgets for shipping. So I don't think it's common unless you're, larger gallery or museum like above. But yeah, like it's memorable when you just go ahead and take care of it, and then we'll do what we can to get you some money. Like if we have money left over or whatever, like most places aren't, they want to support you. They know it like costs a lot of money, to ship work, but it just makes it a lot easier, like from the admin perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of like open calls require it for like smaller and medium sized galleries. They usually say you have to have return shipping. And like grants are this whole other ball of wax, but like sometimes the grant will cover shipping and sometimes it won't. Like it just depends. And it depends on the grant. It depends on who we get it from. It depends on what we ask for. It depends on how many budgets we can get ahead of time. Like I've told some of y'all this before, but like sometimes we plan our shows out 5 years in advance. So if you submit something to a show, like to our open, like we have a standard open submissions at all times. And if you send something in, it's not necessarily a no forever. It's just like a no right now, because we keep those on file. So that's something else to always remember, is to stay as professional as possible. If we have you in a juried competition, be as professional as humanly possible, because then in 5 years, when we're like, hey, didn't we have someone who made really pretty feathers and we're doing an iridescent exhibition on feathers and beetles and bugs and butterflies? Let's see if they still are making the same work, and then we'll reach out to that artist. But if you pack it in baseball caps and beer can things, we're not going to call you. Like, so just try to always kind of keep that in mind. Be as professional as possible.
And just remember that just because you're working with like a gallery or a museum or an organization, they're still real people.
They are.
Who are putting hands on your work. So like being respectful and kind, I think, goes a long way.
Yeah, I remember, I think I shipped something to Stay Home Gallery and Pam poloed me and was like, you're the only one who did courtesy tabs. And I was like, yes. So yeah, that's just
I
something.
didn't know what courtesy tabs were before tonight. So
Courtesy tabs, I don't have any tape, but I'll do. So like, here's your tape. Okay. You like fold over a little bit and then you tape it to your piece so that there's always this little tab, and then you can like rip it later. And so it's not all stuck to the bubble.
That's pretty brilliant. Rebecca said, what about including a card or a brochure for the curator?
That's always lovely. If you don't want to include that in packing, because sometimes the curator's not like in the room when you're unpacking stuff, you can always send a separate thank you card. We love thank you cards. I keep all of mine. But like a nice little handwritten note. I had one lady send one from our last group show, and it was like a bunch of cats and spaceships. And then like I opened it, she was like, I know it was like herding cats, but thanks so much for including me in your show. Like, it's just like, be memorable, be sweet. Like, I still have that up on my bulletin board because I think it's precious. But yeah, I had a mentor that ships 3D work, and she paints her crates so she can see if people step or kick her boxes. Oh my goodness. And then she calls them Cadillac crates. That's hilarious, Maya. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I don't step on crates. I've never
kick
done that. Let
boxes.
me tell you, I have never had 20 crates in our storage area and then stepped on a few of them. No, yeah, I've climbed on them. Maya, she would have been mad at me.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Beth.
Yeah.
You're amazing. What a wealth of knowledge. Thank you. I'll get this on the network.
This should be more like known. Like,
oh, totally.
I told Kaylin, I was like, just please, like let me talk about this, because it's so important and no one tells you these things.
No, it's so essential. Unless you learn it from a peer or a mentor, it's like, where are you going to learn it? So
for sure.
Thanks so much, Beth. Thanks everyone for coming. And yeah, just spread the word once I get this up on the network. Share it with a friend. Talk to y'all soon.
Thank you all so much for coming.